Victoria Nuland, or the Neocon Cookie Monster, she has resigned or retired, as the State Department is letting on. And so I wanted to get your reaction to this. There have been many reactions across social media to Victoria Nuland's resignation. Some have said that this seems to be almost like a force out, or that she'll be falling upwards into the revolving door. Some have linked comments she recently made about Russia, saying that this isn't the Russia that we wanted all along, with regard to how the conflict in Ukraine has gone. And of course, Victoria Nuland, as an Undersecretary of State for over a decade now in some capacity, has been one of the architects of the US's, especially the US's leadership in the Ukraine proxy war. So, Scott, your reaction to Victoria Nuland's resignation, what were your impressions of what this could mean, or why this happened in the first place?
Well, first of all, I think we need to understand that we don't know anything. I'm sure in the next couple of days, all the dirty details will come out because it's Washington, D.C., and nothing can be kept secret. Right now, they're making it appear to be this is an amicable, if that's a word, split. It's like, she's resigned or something of that nature. Let's be clear about this. This was not a voluntary action on her part. She is new to the job of Deputy Secretary of State. She's the number 2 person in the State Department. She's been here been involved in State Department policy making under 6 presidents for many, many decades. And she is the architect of our current Ukrainian policy. Whether you like her, you don't like her is irrelevant. She is somebody that was an institution in Washington, D.C., and institutions just don't disappear like that, especially in the middle of the project that she initiated, because she is the architect of this conflict with Ukraine. She's not somebody who believed in a reset. She's not somebody who believed in, diplomacy. She believes in hard power. And, this war with Ukraine or with Russia is hard power personified in the name of Victoria Nuland. So her departure signals one of 2 things or both things. One, that she is no longer in sync with the policy direction that the president and the Secretary of State are pursuing. That she is pushing hard for something that they're not willing to embrace, and as a result, she is in a position where she either has to compromise or resign. And I think she's a principled person. Again, if you don't like her, that's one thing, but she believes in what she's doing. And because of that, she's not going to back down. She's also somebody who is, as I said, an institution in Washington, D.C. I don't think she's falling up. I think she's done with the Biden administration. I think this is it. But she will fall back on various think tanks and other, support networks that are out there, and she will become a critic, or at least an advocate for a stronger policy on Ukraine and against Russia. So she's not disappearing, but her ability to influence policy directly is over. I think she also may have, it's not just a matter of internal disagreement. I think she may have been somewhat insubordinate, or at least impertinent, meaning she got ahead of the game. She's been saying,
oh, sorry about that. Continue. Sorry.
Victoria Nuland got me.
Victoria. she went back. She's backstage, actually. That's where she ended up.
But she, I think she got ahead of the game. She was pushing something. She said things such as there would be some surprises with weapons. I don't think that's the language that the Biden administration is looking for at this point in time. I also think the Biden administration right now is sort of having a realism check. They have an election coming up that the White House very much wants to win. And Ukraine is becoming a major problem for them. And so the question is, what can be done to lessen the fallout of what appears to be an inevitable Russian victory? The United States now is wrestling with a Europe that recognizes weakness on the part of U.S. policy, at least in terms of the French, and the French are becoming more assertive. The Germans are, I think there's a momentum inside Germany we'll probably talk about that is likewise assertive, even though Scholz is trying to put the brakes on. There's this momentum inside Europe and NATO that's pressing on the issue because the U.S. was leaning forward aggressively. I mean, we were putting tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars forward, pressuring everybody to lean forward. And we finally got everybody to lean forward, and we're starting to lean back. And, Europe is in somewhat of a conundrum here, what to do. And many like Macron are saying to continue lead forward, even though the United States is not. So the United States has to deal with this situation, and they have to manage Russia. They don't want a war with Russia. And right now, we are closer to a war with Russia than we have been at any time in recent history. And when I say war with Russia, I mean a nuclear war with Russia. There's a lot of people out there who say Vladimir Putin's bluffing, the Russians aren't. Guys, you may be right, but I don't want to find out. I don't want to go, oh, no, he wasn't bluffing, because then it's too late. Then we all die. There's nothing intelligent about pushing the Russians on an issue where you think they're bluffing when the consequences is global thermonuclear warfare. Everybody should be taking a big step backwards and a big pause and a big timeout. And I think the Biden administration right now is wrestling with all of this. So I think Victoria Nuland was just no longer in sync. She had become inconvenient, and she was told to go.
Yeah, I mean, this comes less than a week when she was on CNN saying that this is not the Russia we want. We want a Western-oriented European partner, which I find to actually be interesting, because to hear even the word partner in Russia in any capacity come out of Victoria Nuland's mouth is quite surprising, even if she is saying it with the intimation of regime change. But when it comes to her resignation, I mean, you said that the conflict in Ukraine is not really going how the United States wanted. Do you feel like this is merely changing the guard? Some have commented that the person who's going to take over her stead is also a former advisor to Dick Cheney. And so we can't really expect anything different coming out of the White House. But do you feel like there is a change happening in U.S. policy with regard to Ukraine at this juncture? And does Nuland's ouster, because I agree with you, I do feel like it is an ouster. It wouldn't feel so abrupt if it were not, but it does feel very abrupt.
I mean, the only other explanation for this would be some sort of personal illness, but there's no discussion of that whatsoever. This is all the indications are that there's a split in in opinion about the direction of American policy. Bass, the person that's replacing her, may have neoconservative roots, but he was also the ambassador of Afghanistan at the time that we withdrew. And so he's somebody who has proven that he's capable of overseeing a major transition. And I think that's the direction we're heading in right now. When Victoria Nuland said this isn't the Russia we wanted, remember, she was in on the ground floor of the reset. The reset was the Russia we wanted. The reset was to keep Dmitry Medvedev in as president of Ukraine, or sorry, Russia, and to keep Vladimir Putin not only out but down. I mean, at one point in time, Joe Biden actually traveled to Moscow, I think, in March of 2011, and met with the opposition. This is insane. Met with the opposition and said it's not a good idea for Vladimir Putin to try and become president. It'll be bad for Putin. It'll be bad for Russia. And it's like, here's the vice president of the United States in Moscow in an election year, making a statement like that. I mean, we'd go apoplectic if Dmitry Medvedev came over to the United States and met with, I mean, there's no Russian controlled opposition here, but let's just say he met with Trump and things like that and said, it's not a good idea for Joe Biden to run for president again. It'd be bad for Biden. It'd be bad for America. And almost everybody going, get the hell out of here. You can't, you have no right to say, but Biden felt comfortable enough to go there and say that. But then he said some other things. We'll find something else to do for Vladimir Putin. We'll offer him the presidency of the International Olympic Committee. And so that's what we wanted. We wanted Putin to go away and run the IOC while Medvedev stayed in, and Medvedev became a good Russian, a well-behaved Russian, a Russian that was Western oriented. That was the whole thing about Medvedev. The idea was we're going to, shove non-governmental organizations back down Russia's throat to come back in and take control of societal reform, political reform, economic reform, basically to turn Medvedev into Yeltsin 2.0. And that was the plan, and it didn't work. And we've been trying to get Putin ousted ever since. This war was never about defeating Russia militarily. It was about doing enough harm to Russia militarily that their economy, straining as we hoped under economic sanctions, would collapse, unable to sustain, a wartime economy. And the collapsing economy would, set forth a Moscow Maidan moment where you had, the citizens of Moscow coming in the streets demanding Putin's ouster, and out he goes, and, in steps whomever, but it wouldn't be Putin. That's Victoria Nuland's grand strategy. That's the thing she's been pushing all along. Get Putin out of office and to turn Russia into what was in the 1990s, a compliant, subservient nation, weakened, thoroughly weakened. That's the Russia she wants. All this other talk about, a partner. Russia was never a partner. Russia was never a partner. Even in the 1990s, Russia was a slave. Seriously, it was a colony of America. It was a slave of America. It did whatever America wanted it to do, and we destroyed Russia. We literally tried to kill the nation state, and millions of Russians died as a result. Millions of Russians died as a result, a direct result of the chaos that was engendered in the 1990s because of America's thing. So this concept of a Russian partner is stupid. We don't want a Russian partner. Never have wanted a Russian partner. She's hypocritical, she's a liar, and the bottom line is she has failed. Ultimately, the Victoria Nuland experiment is over. It's done. In fact, the more you push the Nuland experiment, the stronger Russia gets. And I think that's what the Biden administration is starting to come to grips with, is that, we've created a monster from an American perspective, because the last thing we wanted was this, was Vladimir Putin to be deeply entrenched. We were, at best, what we should have hoped for is keeping Putin at, just around 60% of the vote. Look, he's a popular president. He's rebuilding, but if you keep Putin in united Russia at around 60%, 58%, 55%, that means that at some point in time when he steps aside or when he becomes vulnerable, it's an attainable objective of creating democratic opposition to remove him. But when Putin's running it, 70%, 78%, there's no opposition that can be built to overcome that. Literally, there's nothing that can happen. So we've created a Russia that's opposition proof. I mean, in America, we're trying to turn, Alexei Navalny into some sort of godlike figure. He's the Russian He was nothing. 2 to 5%. That's all he's ever
I heard
get.
his wife wasn't even at his funeral in Moscow. Anyway, that's an aside.
Now we're getting into the personal thing. Look, marriages are complicated things, and hopefully the people can find a way to make them succeed. But I'm never going to jump on the dump on a broken marriage bandwagon. I'm grateful that my marriage has lasted 33 years and hopefully lasts 33 more if I'm around. There's no reason why it shouldn't, but marriage is hard work. And when you're Alexei Navalny and you are in that kind of work, there's a lot of stress and strain on a marriage. So I'm not, I'm just not going to pick on her on that. There's other things that, the concept that she's going to be the new Navalny and
Right.
She's
Well, she was in
speaking on behalf of
DC. She
Russia.
was in Washington at the time, I think. I think that was the
Munich.
rub. Oh,
Well,
okay.
yeah, I think she was in Munich and she was meeting
Munich.
with McFaul, and then suddenly she became anointed at the Munich Security Conference and all this and all that. But my point is, there is no opposition in Russia. The closest thing to an opposition is the Communist Party, and it weighs in at 20% on a regular basis. There's 20% of people who are nostalgic for the old days, but they're dying off. You're not getting I remember when I was visiting Russia in May, I was walking around a couple of cities like Irkutsk and Ekaterinburg, and I came, you come up on the Communist Party headquarters, and it's pretty rough. I mean, because they're not the Communist Party of old, and but there's an opposition. I mean, people say there is no room for an opposition in Russia. Really? 2014. Go back and look at a conference in Sochi. And look at Zhirinovsky speaking up there. Putin's president. Zhirinovsky's chastising him. I mean, condemning him, criticizing him vocally for failing in Crimea, failing in Donbass, failing as a leader. And and you're sitting here, anybody who thinks that you're not allowed to criticize Putin was on stage listening to this. Now, people say, well, Zhirinovsky's just a useful tool and all that stuff. Well, you know what? That was one hell of a performance, and I've seen him do similar things like that. And Putin has said, remember in the 2007 Munich Security Conference, when he spoke, he said, "We're not against people criticizing us. In fact, we encourage it because that's how we learn. But we want the criticism to come from Russians who are working on Russian agendas. We don't want non-governmental organizations and Western governments coming in and building up an opposition that criticizes us on their behalf. We don't want that." And that's what Nuland wanted. That was the Nuland project, and it's dead. It's over. Not only that, the Russian military today has been revitalized. I mean, from a Western perspective, if you want to keep Russia weak, if that's the goal, the last thing you do is give them the reason to invest into new strategic nuclear weapons. But we gave them that reason, and the Russians have produced the world's best strategic nuclear weapons. You don't allow Russia to create the condition where they take a military that had atrophied and was still rusty and allow them to explode the rust off. I mean, the mobilization of the 300,000 reservists in 2022 was the best thing that ever happened to Russia after the mobilization of defense industry. But if we had not done this, and let's say for whatever reason we had sought a major war with Russia, one of Russia's things is they would have to expand from a 900,000 strong military to a 5 million strong military overnight. And they had all these mobilization centers that were supposed to be able to help do that. Well, a lot of these were non-functional. A lot of them, corruption had taken over. They had sold the stuff. It just, weapons weren't maintained. It wasn't there. And so the 300,000 mobilization exposed all of these problems, and Russia fixed them. Today, Russia has a mobilization capability that can seamlessly, when called upon, mobilize over 1 million men, literally that quick. The West can't do that. Hell, America can't even recruit 64,000 soldiers. They need to fill the ranks. They had to cut the army by 24,000 because they don't have enough people. The Navy, we can't recruit enough people for the Navy. Air Force, the same problem. So, here's Russia, able not only to receive more volunteers now, they have a very robust military, a combat-hardened military, combat-experienced military, and they have the ability to mobilize, and they have a defense industry that can support that mobilization. Imagine if we had tried to have the Russians mobilize with that rusty, old, corroded mobilization capacity, and at the same time, they're trying to kickstart their defense industry and all the hiccups that come with that. But now, 2 years into this war, Russia has a smooth operating system of war. And their economy is growing. Some people say that's because of the war aspect of it. Sure, there's no doubt that the increased defense spending has contributed, but that doesn't matter. We're supposed to be strangling their economy to death, and their economy is growing and growing. And right now, even on the trade aspect of it, It's not a negative. It's not like there's a negative civilian aspect overweighed by the military. The civilian aspect, there is growth. So even if you take away the military aspect, the civilian capacity is growing. The Russian economy is healthy. It's doing well. That's not what we wanted. We wanted a Russian economy that was weak, dependent upon the West, so that we could come in and save the day, as we did before, create new classes of oligarchs, etc. The other thing we did with sanctions, we helped Russia purge the oligarch class. Yeah, there's oligarchs now, but they don't have anywhere near the power that they used to. They are completely controlled by the state. Their money doesn't leave Russia. It gets reinvested into Russia. That's why the economy is growing. So the Nuland project has failed. And I think the Biden administration is waking up to that and understanding that there are consequences attached to this that America is going to have to adjust to. It doesn't mean that we surrender to Russia. It doesn't mean that we give Russia everything they want, but it means that we have to adapt, because the alternative is perhaps thermonuclear war, which, frankly speaking, we're probably not in a position to win at this point in time. Nobody wins a nuclear war, but there was a time when we could consider that we could emerge from a global nuclear war, having destroyed Russians' capacity to sustain civilization and sustain something that allowed America to emerge as a nation state. Diminished, radioactive, but a nation state. That's Cold War thinking. We have just enough. But you do that by overwhelming Russia's capacity to hit you. You take out their nuclear weapons so they're only hitting 30% of what they want to hit instead of 100%. I think today, right now, we wouldn't hit 30% of what we want to hit, and Russia would hit 110% of what they want to hit. And we know that now. The fact is, right now, there's a chance that Russia would emerge from a nuclear war with civilization sustainment, meaning that we can't destroy Russia. It's a big ass place, and they've spread their industry out, etc. Russia, I think, would be able to survive at least initially. Now, what's happened when nuclear winter comes in and all that kind of stuff, we'll see. But the Russians have nuclear superiority over the United States right now. There's no doubt about that. So I think we have to find a way to get back to the strategic nuclear negotiation table. But Russia's not going to do that so long as we have the Nuland project, which talks about the strategic defeat of Russia. So we need a new project. We need new thinking. And I don't think the Biden administration has agreed on what they're going to do. I think there's an agreement that what they were doing was failing, and they need to change direction. And Victoria Nuland is no longer part of the solution. She's become part of the problem, and so she had to go.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyHaiFong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.